In this video, I want to share with you 8 ways to get great backlinks by getting publicity. And publicity is fantastic because
this video is brought to you by EpiPie's Academy.
The links come from already authoritative good sites. And you don't just get the links, you also get real traffic coming from those sites because generally those are trafficked websites, and because of that you also get recognition and branding. So a lot of great things come from publicity. It's not always easy to get publicity, and it's not for all situations, so be mindful of that. But see if you can make it work for your situation. So the first way is helpareporter.com. This is known as Haro. This is a site where reporters on a daily basis write what kind of things they're researching. So they're not experts, and they're looking for expert sources to give them insight for their stories. And if you give them insight, they'll mention you in their story. For example, I've gotten links from Mashable.com through Help a Reporter. I've gotten links from CBS News. These are tremendous sites that otherwise you have to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars to somehow get these links in a different way. It's very competitive to get links from here. You have to pitch a lot to get a few links, but it can be worthwhile for SEO. Also, radioguestlist.com and podcastguests.com are equivalent of Help a Reporter, where Help a Reporter is for journalists writing stories, but Radio Guest List is for podcasters and radio shows who can have you as a guest on their show. And you can get in front of some very, very big audiences. The only thing to watch out for is that the show itself doesn't give you a link, but the show might have an accompanying blog from which they'll link to you. And I've gotten dozens and dozens appearances on different podcasts and radio shows, some quite big, from just these sites. And by the way, Help a Reporter and Radio Guest List, they're essentially free. Now, you can also use press releases, like sites like PRWeb or PRlog.com. They have press release services that are really cheap. And if your press release gets picked up, it might get picked up on large sites with backlinks to your site. Also, if anyone you know has gotten publicity from your business contacts, ask them. That's a good way to get introduced to influencers or journalists. Now, let's keep going. Another thing you can do is cold pitching journalists. Now, this is less effective, and this is kind of like link begging, but you can pitch journalists and influencers and see if they'll mention you. If your story is compelling, they might do it for free. If it's not compelling, they might ask for some money. Or if you can offer free things or whatever they may need in return, that might actually help you. But cold pitching does have a relatively small, but it is a brute force strategy that does work. Also, if you don't want to just cold pitch journalists, because that gets a relatively low success rate, you can take the wiser approach and interact with journalists and influencers online, on social media, comment on their stories, form relationships with them. This is the long-term approach, and then they'll be much more likely to recognize you and actually cover you when you've built up a little bit of a relationship. So if you invest in those relationships, that can turn a no into a yes. And of course, another thing is on their sites, these influencers, you can buy ad space. It doesn't mean advertising through Google or Facebook. What I do mean is just going directly and buying maybe some part of their site and as an ad, but that ad would naturally come with a link. Of course, Google doesn't like when you pay directly for links, but in this case, it's okay because you're actually buying the ad space itself, not just a link. Also, you can present at events. The event organizer might link to you from the event page, or there may be bloggers or influencers at the event who might write a story about you. Events are a great way to network and sort of get some people to see what you're doing and a little bit of recognition. And lastly, just try to do anything to be unique. Don't be the boring old bland version of what your business is. Do something unique, funny, original, and all of a sudden that will stand out. And once you stand out a little bit, you'll get noticed. And once you get noticed, you'll get mentioned. It takes a little courage. It takes a little creativity to stand out and do something unique. It's not for everyone, but if you can do that, that can go a long way. So always try to think of how can your company be a little bit unique in what it does. And you might not figure it out immediately, but once you do, that will give you potential for publicity and backlinks. So these are great and legitimate ways to get publicity for free essentially, or at minimal costs on your own without having to hire anyone.